It's the I Can't Mom Today podcast with Heather, the new mom, and Vera, the seasoned mom. I Can't Mom Today.
Hey, this is Vera and Heather back again with another episode of I Can't Mom Today podcast. Hi, Vera.
Hello, Heather. How's it going today?
Oh, I'm so tired.
Why are you tired? Oh, yeah. The last time I talked to you, your neck was all messed up.
Oh my God. Yeah. I finally have use of my neck again. Like it's a little bit tender, but the whole weekend I was just like, I was taking Tylenol because I just couldn't. And that did it. That helped. But yeah. So that on top of that and not sleeping well because of that, Brad had to drive really far today. So he woke up really early, and guess who woke up with him?
Baker.
Yeah.
And Mommy.
Yeah. So instead of waking up at 6, I woke up at like 4:55.
Dear Lord.
I know. So I'm like,
yeah.
How are you? How's your pains?
I think that slowly but surely, I'm at the 3-month mark now with my methotrexate medication for my RA. And, I think I'm slowly starting to notice I'm having more semi-good days than bad.
Good.
So it's just, it's one of those things where I know I'm not going to wake up one day and be like, woohoo, I'm good. It's going to be, it's gradual, and I just have to be patient. But I did have a meltdown the other day where I was just like, it really feels normal, and nobody knows what it feels like to be me, and it hurts. So I did, cried in front of my husband and my 18-year-old. Who was very sweet. Luke was very sweet about it. He's like, it's okay, Mom. I was like, I feel like I always have to act like I'm okay, and I'm not really okay. He's like, it's okay, Mom. You're fine. You can cry. I'm glad that you feel like you can cry in front of me, and then you can tell me you're not okay. I'm a big boy now. I can handle it. So it was very sweet. It's still, of course, even a big stinky 18-year-old I still see as a cute little 3-year-old. So it's hard to be like, I need help.
Oh, that's sweet.
So it is. So that was, in a strange roundabout way, that was actually kind of a proud mom moment. I was like, okay, I raised somebody who's a bit empathetic and can be sweet. So his wife will thank me later, hopefully.
Yes. Or husband.
Or husband. Yeah, he could have a husband. I mean, I don't think he's headed in that direction, but if he was,
I think at this point you might know, but maybe not.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So other than that, everything's, life in general. So, but I wanted to. We have our friend Stephanie here. Say hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
I met Stephanie at a business women's group gathering not too long ago. And as I was talking to her, she's an accountant, but she also happens to be adopting not 1, not 2, but 3 children.
Yes.
And she's an accountant. So I was like, oh my God, you've got to be on our podcast. I Can't Mom Today. So she was like, what? It's called I Can't Mom Today. Yeah, that fits. So, so thank you so much for being with us, Stephanie. And we just want to hear all about, give us so you're an accountant, tell us about the kids. And then I want to just hear how this all came to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, my husband and I have been fostering, probably since the first month that we were dating. Oddly enough, my cousin lost custody of her kids, and so I told him, I said, hey, remember how you said you really liked me? Well, I'm suddenly going to have children. So, how do you feel about that? And so he was a little hesitant. And then I just told him, I said, look, I feel like it's family above all. So unfortunately, if that means that we have to, part ways so that I can raise these kids, that's just what's going to have to happen. And he said, he's like, look, I'll give it a try. And so we helped raise my cousin's kids. We had them for a little over a year. And then they went back, and we decided, what, it's time for us to do some fostering classes and actually get licensed. And so we did that. And then before we finished those classes, my cousin lost custody again of her kids. And so they came to live with us again. And then Hurricane Michael hit. And then they went to live with grandma. And so it was kind of a whirlwind of things. And I am an extreme empath. So, my heart instantly went out to look like, we stayed for Hurricane Michael and we're in Panama City. And so we were hit pretty good. We had our house ripped apart around us while we were in it with my cousin's kids. So I think that was the first moment that I actually felt that mom drive where I'm a prayer. And so I'm praying, if someone has to die, let it be me and not them. So that was, I think, my first mom experience. I mean, of course I was raising them at that point, but that was that first, oh gosh, this is serious, let it be me. If it needs to be someone, let it be me. And then of course, when they went to live with grandma, then it's like, look at all these houses. I mean, there's got to be oodles of kids in the system right now needing somewhere to go. So we found a place to rent that had extra bedrooms and then the system, they just kind of drug their feet on that situation. We had space, there was lots of kids. And unfortunately, a lot of the kids in our area got moved completely out of our area. I mean, they went to Jacksonville, Orlando, Pensacola, a little bit of everywhere. So then we found the house that we're in now, bought it. And then they called and said, hey, look, we'd like to put a sibling group with you. And we said, okay, I mean, that works. That was our big heart moment, was trying to pull kids back together, families that had already been separated that needed to be put back together. And so they told us, we've got several groups that are separated that need to be put back together. And so again, we said, okay, well, let's just pray about it. And whichever ones you guys choose, then that's the one that we'll feel like is meant for us to take. And so the kids that we took at that point are the kids that we have now just adopted. And they were fun, and I say that with a supreme amount of sarcasm. Bless their heart, they've been through more trauma than most adults know.
How old were they when you first fostered?
When they moved in, the littlest one had just turned 2 and wasn't speaking. The girl was 7, had just turned 7, and the little boy had just turned 9. Yeah. No, 10. Sorry, 10.
10, 7, and 2. Oh, yep. Wow.
And so the baby, of course, he experienced trauma as far as, being birthed to, unfortunately, a mom who was an alcoholic, and he was born 3 months premature. And they think it's because of the alcohol use, but she already had her other 2 in care. So she drove to Gainesville thinking if she had him in Gainesville, they wouldn't take him from her. But that's just not how it works. So they had her escorted back to Bay County, and he was removed at that point. So he was with her all of one day before he was removed and put into care.
No question.
Yes.
Was he not in like NICU or anything?
Well, that's a good question. I guess I'm not even sure. It would make sense if he was premature. They just told me that she was only with him for a day before he was removed. So I guess I need to look into those details.
Days. Yeah.
The lady who had him, I know her fairly well now. So I guess I need to get those details, because it would make sense that he would be in some kind of a NICU.
Because I can't imagine like a 3-month-old baby being toted away. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I know the picture she sent me of him when she had him, he was so tiny.
I bet.
And she had, because at the point I said, well, how long was he with her? And she said he was with her for a day before he was removed. So maybe she's meaning that she wasn't allowed to be with him. And I'm not sure. That's a great question.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just extreme for a small child to, have endured being in the womb and having all of these. I mean, she smoked nonstop, and she continued drinking throughout pregnancy. And so, of course, our concern there was the fetal alcohol syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
He does have an enlarged head. He has very defined eyebrows that are not standard, I guess you would say. Very telltale signs of that fetal alcohol. And that was concerning because we do know a few people who have adopted children with that same illness, and it didn't turn out well for them. So that was scary, but we thought, okay, you know what? We're not going to think long-term here. We're going to think short-term. We're getting the kids back together. Their mom's going to get them back. And then the older two had been through severe amounts of physical abuse. The oldest was what we call a target child. So he was primarily the one that was beaten. Mentally, emotionally, any way that he could be abused, he was. My little girl, we believe that from some of the stories that she's told us, that it's possible there was some sexual abuse, which we haven't gotten through with therapy yet. And I'm hoping if that's the case, that with therapy it'll come out. But some of the stories that they said that they've, they don't tell me the stories, they talk to each other about them. And one was so disturbing that I turned my phone on record and set it on the console in my car because I thought it needed to be documented. It was very disturbing. And then we tried. We tried and tried. We had them in our home for about 6 months before we actually had to have the older two removed. The trauma ran deep, as they say. And it was, I had at that point, an 8-year-old who was destroying anything in my house she could. And this is a brand new house that we just bought. She all of the closet doors by kicking them. She put holes in the walls, dents in the walls, anything she could throw at the walls when she was angry. And then just her mouth, she would say the most hurtful things, anything she could think of, and just would nonstop fight and argue and fight. And I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover. So, I can fight if I need to, but I prefer peace in my home, and there was no peace. Most weekends I would go to bed early. I would put the kids in bed at 7:30, go to bed early, and and I'm an early morning person. I would get up at 4 or 5 o'clock, and I would stay in bed as late as possible because I didn't want to see her when I woke up. So it got to the point where several friends thought that Eric and I needed to actually go to counseling as well to cope with all that was happening. Because you pour in and you pour in and you invest and you get back just pure hatred and anger. And, part of you thinks it's not them, it's the circumstances that has developed them in the way that they are. But at the same time, it hits a point where it's like, how much can you actually take before it destroys your marriage, or it destroys, you being a positive influence in their life, I'm a very open book, honest person. Honestly, there were times that I would think, well, I know now why your mom drank, because it was so rough. But then it's like, no, that's not the case. It's not them. It was their mom and their dad and those situations. Their dad passed away in 2018. So they were in care for 2 years before the baby was born. They were in care for 2 years, and their dad started having heart complications. And so the system thought it would be best for them to go back and live with their dad, even though he hadn't performed the steps that he needed to perform to get them back. But they thought, well, he's dying, so they need to be with him. Well, unfortunately, the logic there didn't work. All they got from that was watching him die slowly. and hearing him become, from what I was told by their mom, a very angry and bitter person before he died.
Yeah. And that's not great energy for little kids to be around.
No, not at all. So, I get the system's point of them getting to spend time with him, but I think it was a fatal error on their part because it was not a good time. It was not a happy time. A lot of the trauma that they have was from that time. He told them that he was going to die and come back in one of their stuffed animals.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So when they were removed after he had passed and they didn't have those stuffed animals, they lost their minds.
I'll bet.
Right. It was just a very unhealthy situation, on top of an already unhealthy situation.
So when you had to have them, after you had them, you'd fostered them at this point for 6 months and then had to have the 2 older ones removed.
Right.
Where did they go and how long was it till you got them back again?
So they left in the very last week of February in 2020. And then, and we had tried, so back that up 2 months prior, we had hit the breaking point. And we had asked for what they call movement. We asked for them to displace. And then I told the kids I was going to be honest with them. Well, then the system called and said, hey, we've got somewhere for them to go, pack their bags while they're at school. Well, I felt bad because I had not told them that they were going to be moving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so while they were at school, they've got me packing their stuff. And so when they get home and they see their stuff's packed, and at that point, that was my fault. I induced that trauma. Meltdown. We'll be better. We swear we'll do this. We'll do that. We won't be angry anymore. And it's like, you can't help being angry. You've got stuff, you've got trauma you need to work through with the counselor. And we begged for therapy. We begged and begged for therapy. And we still hadn't been given therapy for them, which I thought they needed therapy. I think all kids in care need to have therapy. As soon as they're removed from their parents, they should instantly, as soon as they get a caseworker, they should get a therapist.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think
Even
everybody
all there with their family.
I don't kid, no matter what. I think everybody could use a therapist.
Everyone. Yes. Yes. And so then fast forward 2 months, I begged the system. I said, look, we can't let them leave right now. This is too much. This is going to cause long-term emotional damage.
Mm-hmm.
So we had them for another 2 months, and the behaviors, for a week, they were perfect children. And then it came to a screeching halt. And then it got bad in the next 2 months. And so we told the kids that time, I said, look, obviously you guys can tell it's not working out. You can see that we're not meshing. And I said, so maybe there is a family out there that would better mesh with you guys. And I said, I told you guys I was going to be honest from there on out. And so while I probably should not be telling you that they're going to move you, I want you to know, which they actually really appreciated. I think that too, we can't look at them and say, oh, well, they're, 8 and 10. We have to say, look, these are kids who have been through a lot.
Yeah.
And so, honesty really should be the best policy there. And so they asked me if I knew where, and I said no. And they said they begged me not to let them go back to Treehouse, which is in Tallahassee. And that's where they came from when they moved in. And they said, please, anywhere but there. And so the oldest said, if they put me back there, I'll kill myself.
Oh my God.
So, and it wasn't the first time he had threatened to harm himself. And so they called, they said, Treehouse has openings. And I said, I'm sorry, that's just not going to work. And so they said, well, you want to move, and I said, well, we'll just keep them until you find somewhere else. So find something better. That's not an option. Yeah. So they called back a couple weeks later and said, okay, we've got, this group home in Panama City. And so, I said, okay. So I told the kids asked, can you help us move over there? Will you take us? And I said, yeah, I would love to. And, I said, I'll help you set your rooms up and everything else. And since I still had their brother, because the group homes won't take kids under a certain age. And so I told him, I said, we'll still plan to do outings. We'll come pick you guys up and we'll go and do something. And so they loved that idea.
Cool.
Unfortunately, the caseworker did not like that idea. And he said it would be too much trauma for them to continue to go through seeing you and then not being able to be with you. And I thought the opposite. I thought that it would be better to stabilize them, until, and the kids asked the day, they wouldn't let us take them to the group home. They said, nope, you'll take them to school and we'll pick them up from school. And so I let them know they're not going to let us take you. And so when we dropped them off at school, the oldest said, when my mom doesn't get us back, will you adopt us?
Wow.
So and that was the third time he asked us to adopt him. He asked us one time after court, he said, so what does this mean? And I told him, look, that's what this means. And he said, well, can't you just adopt me now? And I said, no, bud, your mom still has rights. And he said, well, she's not going to do what she has to do.
Yeah.
But he'd been through enough to see and know and understand. So they left in end of February. And then we tried for months with the caseworker to have fun play dates and fun this and fun that. Well, then COVID hits and he's like, well, nope, now we can't because of COVID.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, just keep me updated on how they're doing because I still cared.
Yeah.
It's just, it was too much in the house at the time.
Yeah.
And so then their mom, we had been in contact with her a lot. I tried helping her walk through some of it. I'm like, look, your kids need you.
Yeah.
We've got to get you on track. What is it? I said, I'm not going to give you money because I know a lot of people have given you money. And that's not helped. So what is it that you need that's going to stop this process? And she said, well, I was raised by alcoholics. My parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles died from being alcoholics. So I guess that's just the path for me. And so that was rough. We tried several different times to talk sense to her. I was more like a tough love with her. She called one time and she asked, can you adopt all three of them? If I sign them over to you, will you adopt them? And I told her I would talk with Eric. I talked with him and I told her, I said, we talked about it and it's not an option right now. I said, I think that your older two, despite all they've been through, have that natural want to be with you. Yeah. No matter what you do. I said, your daughter was in my house telling me, I don't care that my mom's an alcoholic. Let me just sleep on her couch.
Oh.
Because that children have that natural will to want to be with their parents.
Yeah.
And so I told her, I said, they need you. So no, I said, we would spend years forming them into the children that they could have been without all the trauma. And then all it's going to take is those teenage hormones. And then it's going to be, well, I'm going to go live with my real mom.
Right.
And so I said, it's just not an option. So then she called one night and was crying and said she had been raped and that she didn't know what to do. This was just the life she was in. And so I told her, I said, I'm going to ask you a very serious question. Would you have been in that situation if you had your kids? And I said, my fear is, while this is a horrific thing that has happened, why were you in that situation? I said, honestly, were you drinking? And she said, oh, I was. And I said, so how did you know these people? How did you end up at their house? And I said, did they grab you? Did they snatch you? What happened? And she said, I wanted to get high and they had weed.
Yeah.
And so I said, this is my concern is that when they come back to live with you, you're still going to have those same urges. Are you then going to say, no, I have my kids involved? Or are your kids going to be involved in this situation? Because from one of the stories previously, they had told me they had watched her be sexually abused. Now they don't know the terminology of what they witnessed, but they will when they get older. And the trauma that's going to follow because of that. And so I'm like, and so I told her that I said, this is perpetuating this problem. I begged her to go into assisted living to get her, away from that environment. She had no desire to do that. And so she said, this is why I want you to adopt all three of them. And I told her, I said, it's just not, it's just not something that we can do right now. And so she asked us if we would adopt the baby. He had a different dad than the other two.
Oh, okay.
And so we said, because at that point he was 3, didn't recognize her. They were doing Zoom calls. He didn't want to sit there and talk to her. He, even with the kids on the screen, he just wasn't involved. Mm-hmm. And then she said, at one point, she said, "Look at mama." And he looks over at me, and I thought, oh, man, that's going to wreck her. But in his mind, I'm the one he's known since he was just turned 2.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you can't explain it to him. He's not going to understand. And so at that point, she said she wanted to sign him over. So the plan was originally to adopt him and only him, and let her get the older 2 back. Because she had been served a TPR, which is where they terminate her rights. So she was served that, saying, this is what we're leaning towards unless you show that you are doing something. And so her mind was, well, I'm going to go ahead and sign the baby over because having 3 was too much for me. So, and the system said, okay, we'll agree with you on this. And so in May, we were on a group conference call with the system, and the caseworker was trying to rush us off the call. He was wanting us to be off the call. And the lady said, well, we still need to talk about Orion and Zariah. And I said, well, I'm curious to know how they're doing. So if we could just, hang out. And that's when we found out that the oldest was not doing well at all at the group home, that he had threatened self-harm, that he was running away. He had ran away 3 times. And the 3rd time he had taken 2 other boys with him. So he was being kicked out of the group home. They said, we have no other placement options but treehouse. And so, of course, my heart breaks because I'm thinking, he's going to become a product of the system. He's going to be, forced into this lifestyle. And then they said that he was failing in his classes, and he wasn't attending, like they were doing online school. He wasn't participating. And so I said, well, if we could take him back, would that be an option? And they said, well, you already asked for him to be removed. And I said, well, honestly speaking, he was not as tough as his sister. So maybe just him by himself would help. And so we had to fight the system on that one, and they let him move back in. So he was only gone from the end of February to the beginning of May.
Okay.
He moved back in and just soared. I mean, we had tough love talks, like, look, the system doesn't normally do this. And I told him, I said, your option was treehouse or here. And he's like, no, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be here. And so I said, well, I just want you to know that's, the older you get. And I hated telling him that, but I thought he needed to know that, the older you get, the less likely that foster families are going to open doors.
Right.
Because there's more trauma. There's more, you come with a rap sheet. And I told him, every time you act out these running away, self-harm talk, violent behavior, that follows you. And so unfortunately, you didn't put yourself in this position, but now you have something that's following you everywhere you go. Yeah. And so, so he said, okay, he agreed that he was going to, stay focused, try to be nice to his brother. He was very physically aggressive to his brother. They both of them hated their little brother. Mom would show up they're in group homes, and mom would show up and say, oh, we're having a baby. And so in their mind, mom was replacing them with this baby.
Yeah.
So, so he was back. He, within, it was tough the first 2-3 months, because I told him, I said, first you need to write an apology letter to the people at the group home that you just stayed at. I said, your behavior was completely unacceptable. So I said, you're going to write apology letters to all of those members, and then we're going to tackle this schoolwork. And he went from D's and F's to now straight A's. Wow. And has just been doing fantastic. He struggles emotionally, but he's, as far as school goes, he's a bright kid. He's a very, very bright kid.
So in the meantime, what was going on with your daughter?
So
Was she still back at the group home at that point?
She was at the group home.
Okay.
And to be honest, she was the most difficult one that we had. 6 out of 7 days, she was going to be a terror in the house. And so she was asking, she wanted to move back in. She wanted to move back in. And the counselor, that they finally got counseling, the counselor wanted to talk with me and say, hey, well, let's do a Zoom call with her and just tell her, that's if you behave, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to lie to her and give her false hope and tell her, if you behave, you can move back in, because everything in me was saying absolutely not. At the point that Orion had moved back in, it was not even a possibility that we would be adopting them. It was just helping them out until their mom got them back.
Right.
And then, she struggled with that for a little while because she wanted to know why she didn't get to move back. And I said, I feel like you guys need to be honest and tell her, her behaviors were too extreme. But of course they didn't want to tell her that. They like to sugarcoat things with the kids. And I said, I feel like at that age, with what she's been through, she can handle hearing, look, your choices. And this is the problem the kids had. They didn't understand that their choices had consequences, good or bad.
Yeah.
And even their mom said, I didn't teach them that. I'm sorry. I didn't teach them. And so then what was the catalyst that brought her back? So you end up taking her back. Their mom had asked me back in, it was August, I believe, of 2020. She had asked again if we would adopt all three, and she said, Orion's doing so well. And I said, I know, but he needs to go back to his mom. He needs the structure of his biological family. And so she said, well, I'm concerned because she had lupus. And she said, I'm concerned because of my drinking and because of my lupus, that drinking makes lupus worse. And she said, I'm concerned that with now the COVID situation, that if something happens to me, they'll separate my kids out, or they'll end up in group homes the rest of their life. And so I told her, I said, okay. I said, if that is your concern, then if something happens to you, yes, we will adopt all three. And so she said, you give me your word. And I said, I give you my word. That, I talked to my husband, and he said, at that point, we couldn't let them, because they would, the likelihood of them finding a family with the trauma, and they've been moved 9 different times in the 4 years that they were in care. There were 9 different homes. And only one of those moves was not their fault. One of them was because a family member that was fostering them had some kind of medical surgery. So, the likelihood of them finding a home and being kicked out of group homes, it just does not look good.
Yeah.
So,
something happened?
So she back in early October, late September, committed suicide.
The mom?
The mom.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
So that was tough. Unbelievable at some extent. So we had them check into it because the baby's dad, we have a great relationship with him. He's a great guy. He called and told me, and I said, it's not possible. It's, I know she was sick, but I said she was almost too prideful to do that. And he said, no, it's very true. So, the case manager confirmed it, and he's like, don't tell the kids. And I said, oh God, no, I would never tell them that. And so we said, we'd like to go ahead and have her move back into the house. And he said, I don't know if that's going to be optional right now. So it took until November to get her in. And they fought us with everything they had to keep her out of the house. It got to the point where we said we were going to have to hire an attorney.
Wow.
And it's like, you would think they would be thrilled, but I get their hesitation that, they've already been removed. The behaviors are going to get worse because now mom has died. So they took him in, told him with a counselor that mom had passed. My oldest said I knew she was going to die.
Mm.
And the youngest said, did she get in a car accident? And they said, well, the details we're still, trying to unravel. So we'll, we don't know yet, but when we know, we'll let you know. And so they still don't know how she died. My little girl had been at a foster family in between. So she had went back to live with one of her previous foster moms for about 3 weeks. And I think she overheard her talking to someone because just a couple weeks ago, my oldest came and said, hey, she thinks that our mom killed herself. And I said, oh, and it's hard for me to not say, well, that's what happened.
Yeah.
But I told him, I said, look, bud, I said, I know how your mom died. And I want you to know, but I also want us to have a good counselor involved to be able to help you guys walk through that. So it's, quite the situation.
Yeah. So how are they doing now? How are things
doing good?
going?
She's on depression medication, which I don't love because she's so young. And I don't think that that's the right solution. I think that she needs to have the counseling, the trauma specialist to go through and discuss why she's feeling the way that she's feeling. But they put her on it. And so she's stayed on it, and she'll stay on it until we get through, having that chat with her about her mom, and kind of work through some of those details. And then we'll eventually slowly wean her off. And then if she needs to be put back on it at that point, okay. But, I think they're doing good. It's not for the faint of heart.
No.
They say really, really hateful things. But it's one of those that, we told them, look, we said, yes, we chose you. I know she struggles with, she's biracial, and she says, well, I don't look like you. And I said, well, honey, your mom had blue eyes and blonde hair, looked just like me. So she's like, well, I don't look like my mom either. And I said, well, you're biracial, so you're going to be a beautiful mix of your mom and your dad. And I said, it's different than a kid in your class who has two parents that, have the same skin color. Yeah, they're going to look a little bit more because they have the same skin color. That doesn't mean they don't look like, that you don't look like your parents. I said, your nose, your eyes, your jaw looks like your parents. So I said, but you know what you have that your kids in your class don't have is that you were chosen. I said your friends in their class, their parents love them because they're their kids.
They have to.
Yeah, they have to. But I told her, I was like, you were chosen. And so I said, there were 6, and I showed them the website. I said, this is the state of Florida. There's over 600 children in your age category looking to be adopted. And I said, this isn't foster care. This is kids that are out of foster care waiting to be adopted. And I said, you didn't go one day waiting to be adopted. You knew exactly where you were going, and you're here. And I said, so thankfully you didn't have to experience that side of things, wondering, is today the day someone's going to pick me? Wondering, gosh, I'm getting older. Is anyone going to pick me? And then hitting 18 and saying, that's it. I have no family.
Yeah. So how old, what are their ages now?
So right now they are 3, 9, and 11.
3, 9. Okay.
And my 3-year-old will be 4 next month, and my 11-year-old will be 12 the following month. So, getting on up there. I mean, we went from no kids to some older kids.
Yeah.
So we skipped some of the fun parts that I think, building that bond. My little girl calls me mom. My oldest boy does not. So the kids in care call me Mimi. And that's primarily to keep them from calling me mom, because they don't want their biological parents upset.
Yeah.
About, oh, you called that person mom and she's not really your mom. So it's Mimi.
Yeah.
So my oldest still calls me Mimi.
Yeah.
His sister's like, why don't you call her mom? She's your mom.
Aw.
And so occasionally he'll throw one out there. But I think it's just kind of awkward for him.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then we decided, why not? Let's adopt him during tax season because,
Stephanie being the accountant who's like totally slammed.
I was like, what does that mean? Taxi? What do you have? Like, what is that? I completely spaced.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Tax season. Yeah. That's literally my busiest time of the year. And they're like, how's March work? Into March. I'm like, perfect.
Great.
Awesome. Great time.
Perfect date.
I just think that it's so amazing and so giving and loving. I mean, I just hope that, and I'm no doctor by any means, but one of the things I've actually learned by some of the people we've had on the podcast, and also, I do voiceovers and e-learning also, and I've done some trauma, things, e-learning for health professionals, and talking about trauma. And one of the things that I learned is that trauma literally changes your brain. Right. Especially as you're growing as a child. Right. And even we had our friend Carrie on, who specializes in early child development. And, she was a part of an organization called 1 to 3, and how much children can be affected. You don't think because they're not really talking or doing it, they don't know what's going on. Well, they do. Right. And it can affect their little brains. And so I was thinking about that as you were telling the story and all the stuff that they've been through. And it's not just, their brains physically have been altered because of that trauma. Right. And it's so heartbreaking, and it's so difficult to work past that, as you know. Right. So, God bless you. I think that it's amazing that you guys are doing this. And I really hope that, you need to write a book in your spare time, because it's just such an amazing story. And I know people, in fact, my friend Carrie's husband, who I was just talking about, he was in foster care and went through, 9-10 homes growing up. And he will tell you, man, it was hell. It was awful. But he's a success story. He's success, he made it through. He's a grown man now. Right. But I just think, and I hope that you get all of the resources that you need, like the counseling and all that to help them.
Right. Well, we had a great trauma specialist, but she didn't take the kids' Medicaid. So we had to wait until, and at one point I said, I'm just going to pay it. What is it? Well, the evaluation was like $1,000 per kid. And then the sessions were $300 a session. I'm like, whoo. So we're not going to go ahead and pay it. We're going to wait. We'll put them on our military insurance, and then we'll get them set up, but because the therapy that they provide, unfortunately, it's generally speaking, people coming out of school, who are looking for a long-term job. So they had gotten very bonded with the counselor that they started, in 2020. Mm-hmm. And then, by the end of the year, she had to leave to go to a different job. So that's tough, having to move around from counselor to counselor. And, and I think that counseling is great. And I agree. Everybody needs counseling.
Yeah.
But with their specific situation, I think the trauma therapy needs to happen. I think they need to, dive into some of those emotions. Orion, when he first moved in, would tell us that his dad was sitting at the table with us. And then he would say, he would have dreams, and he said, well, my dad was sitting at the end of my bed. And we don't crush any of that. We just said, okay, well, did you get a chance to talk to him? And, who am I to say what he can see and what he can't see?
Yeah.
So, my beliefs still have to be his beliefs. And, so even the baby will like point at something or like wave at something that's not there. And they're like, oh, he's so stupid. And I'm like, no, I said, maybe he sees something that we don't see. And so I'll wave with him like, hey, how's it going? But I think that with the older two, they just, and I've told them before, you guys have experienced more in your little lives than I have as an adult. I am 33. I cannot imagine losing my parents. It wrecks me thinking about it because I'm an empath. But and their young life, having lost both of their parents, having no family that wanted to take them on, I don't know how they're able to cope with some of that. And so I said, that's why I think, trauma therapy is going to be good. We can walk through it, make sure that the, like you said, the change in the brain that has occurred, that we can at least pull it back to where they can move forward. And I told him, you're not changing the past. Nothing about your past will change. It is what it is. You have, and I've told him, you have a sad story, but that's in the past now. Use your past to help build your future. Don't live in a woe is me kind of a world, because it's a very, very lonely world. Say, what, I had a crappy childhood, but
you're a survivor, you're strong.
11 years old or 9 years old. I was chosen for a different life. And so it's funny. My daughter, I'm between coffee and alcohol, I'm going to make it through this parenting thing. So, sometimes I have to have a good, nice glass of wine at the end of the night, because it's like, ooh.
Oh, I understand.
Or an adult timeout, as my husband and I call it. I tapped out 2 nights ago. I said, I'm taking an adult timeout, which is me either going to pet my horses for a little while, or me going into my bedroom and shutting the door. And he takes over, or vice versa, which is nice to have. And so she came, we were filling out paperwork yesterday, and this lady asked us about where we were living and how we went through Michael. And I said, well, we lost our house in Michael. And I said, and as I start to move forward with the story, she looks at me and she goes, Mom, everyone has a sad story.
The student becomes a teacher.
All right.
I said, yes, that is correct.
That's very true. Well, thank you. We really appreciate all the time that you've taken to tell us your story, because it's I can't believe how strong. Speaking of strong people, I don't think I could handle it. I have enough I can't mom today moments with my 18-year-old, or, even, I always talk about my thing, and I don't know where I got it from, where when Luke, my son, was like 3, and I just want to throw him out the window. And Heather would be like, don't worry. She lived in a 1-story building. He wouldn't have gotten hurt. You're just like, oh, I can't deal. I just can't do it,
Right. And that's only one with no trauma.
Exactly. One with, only the, little bits of, trauma I may have inflicted on him and unknowingly.
and chucking him out the window.
Exactly. Chucking him out the window. Yeah. Or like literally I'd tell stories about him not wanting to go to bed, and I'd try everything. And then finally he'd be on the one side of the, bedroom door, trying to pull the door open. And I'm on the other side, holding it closed with a glass of wine on the other hand.
Yep.
Okay. Taking a sip of wine, hang onto the door. No, you're not getting up.
Right.
So stuff like that. Yeah, that happened.
Well, it's nice to hear other moms say, look, this is driving me crazy. And I've got a lot of friends that had a hard time accepting, like, they think, oh, well, they're acting out, just discipline them. And I'm like, you don't understand. This is not my biological child who has not ever been through something. This is a kid who has been through hell, who is reacting to the hell that's still in their head.
Yeah.
You can't beat that out of a kid,
No. You can't time out them out of it either,
No.
Okay, go into timeout. Yeah. Meanwhile, the kid is, punching holes in your wall. Great.
Right. Or packing a bag to run away.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're delicate,
Yeah.
So I get it. That makes complete sense to me. But of course, again, like I said, I've learned so much about the trauma and the brain and all that. It's just insane.
Right.
And you mentioned that. Sorry.
Well, they have us take a test, and I forgot the term of it, but it's you take a 1 through 10 questionnaire to find out what level of trauma you experienced in your youth. I experienced a 1 of 10, which is not much. And then I looked back at that the other day, and both of my kids would have had a 10 out of 10. Wow. So it's sad seeing there's not even one of those 10 questions that they could say, nope, that wasn't my life.
Damn.
All of them. So
Like,
it's like,
and hearing you talk about it, I just was like, I want to find them and like shake their parent. Like, I want to find them and be like, why did you do this? What is wrong with you?
right.
You know, and
But
like,
you think it's a cycle.
and like you said,
Unfortunately,
she
that is exactly how their mom was raised, and
Yeah.
probably how her parents were raised. And, you know, the cycle has to stop.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, I tell the kids all the time, you are your parents. You know, biologically speaking, you have their good and their bad traits. And I said, I grew up with very loving parents. And while I love my parents, I have a great relationship with them. There are qualities about them that I have that I hate about myself, that I struggle regularly trying to stop that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I told him, that's you too. You have to say, okay, this is me, but I want to be this part of I said, your mom was brilliant. She was a smart person before she started drinking.
Yeah.
Keep that. She was a great cook. Keep that. She was funny. Keep that. You know, keep those traits and get rid of the rest.
Yep. Exactly. And being self-aware too. That's what,
Right.
you know, the self-awareness, like, you know, where did that come from? You know, even, you know, we always joke around about our parents' voices come out of our mouths as we get older, and, you know, you hear it and then realize, no, take that back. And no, I don't want that part.
Yep. Let me try again.
Exactly.
I just have to say, I love that you, your approach to this whole thing. I think that more people like you would be amazing for the foster system and, you know, for these kids, because, and don't get me wrong, I would love to foster and adopt, but I just know that I know myself, and I know that I'm not strong enough, and I'm not caring enough in the sense of, you know, I wouldn't be able to bring their parents in and honor them and, like, you know, support them. I would just be like, you did this. Stop it. Leave me.
Yeah, right. Stay away. You
I just
butt
know
munch.
that wouldn't be healthy, but like, I have to give you a moment and say just like how amazing, you know, your struggles daily. You probably don't see it and will not recognize it like we will. You are doing a phenomenal job, and like, these kids are going to be so much better off because of you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I'm not gonna lie. When my cousin took her kids back, because we thought at one point that she was going to let us adopt them, it wrecked me and my husband. I mean, months. I could hear a song on the radio and be bawling. It was not easy in the slightest bit. You know, but I think more people should. It's not easy letting them go back. We do. We've had other kids that have been in and out of the house, and but we see it and we say, look, for that brief moment in their life, we were normal, stable, consistent, loving people. And, you know, if nothing else, if they go back and they live in hell the rest of their childhood, they will remember normal, what love, what genuine,
what that looks like.
Yes, what it looks like, what it is.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe it's one kid, maybe it's two kids, maybe it's a mass of kids that you bring into your house. I mean, there's just so many kids. And the problem is only getting worse, where, you know, so many grandparents nowadays are raising their grandkids, and you know, there's definitely a need for it. It's not easy. I'm not going to lie and give you the frill and say, oh, you're going to love it. It's fantastic. These kids are going to love everything. No, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to spend money, time, and energy trying to give them happy memories. And at the end of the day, they're going to remind you that you're an idiot, that you didn't.
Regular kids, bio kids do that too.
Right. So, you know, I mean, it's that part of it's tough, you know, but man, I can tell you the difference that I've seen in the kids that have moved into our house that were old enough to recognize it. Even the little ones. We had two little brothers that moved in while we had my two boys, and same situation where they were so little and so traumatized. You know, everyone thinks, oh, I want a baby. Oof. You know, my babies that moved in screamed bloody murder all day long. There was no stopping them. Just traumatized little boys. And even now, they still go to the daycare that my youngest goes to. And the oldest will look at me like he'll turn his head as if, you know, I know that person. And so, you know, I'll wave at him. And so now he's gotten to where he'll start waving back. But, you know, it matters. You know, for that brief moment gives them, you know, normalcy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much, Stephanie, for your time and your story and everything. I just think it's so awesome. And Heather, did you have any other questions you wanted to ask Stephanie?
I don't. Thank you. We appreciate you telling us your story, and it's just I can't. I'm
I
speechless.
know. I mean, there have been times where I've wanted to like reach through and be like, oh, I want to hug your kids. Like, tell them the world is beautiful. There are beautiful things in the world. You know? Right. So, but if anybody has any comments or other questions, they can email us, iCan'tMomTodayPodcast@gmail.com, or of course, find us on Facebook, our group and our page and our Twitter and our Instagram, and rate the podcast if you get a chance. Anything else, Heather?
No.
Thank you again, Stephanie.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me.
Take care.
Thanks.